lobby. Let's all go to the lobby, lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to Now Slaying, an It's Slays podcast production where we break down the latest and greatest in the world of horror. I'm your not-so-humble host, Colton.
I'm Rowan.
And today on the show, we're going to be reviewing Talk to Me, which, after a brief stint in a couple of festivals, was released July 28th, 2023, exclusively in theaters. Now, Rowan, I usually throw it right away to you, ask if you're excited, if you're looking forward to the movie. But I missed the last episode of Now Slaying, where you and Jill covered Insidious the Red Door. Which is definitely an okay, in my opinion. But I wanted to kick this episode off just ensuring our loyal fans of Now Slaying that no matter how busy I get with work or family or social obligations, they can always count on me when there's a new A24 horror movie. There's no way in hell I'm going to miss it. So,
did you have your shirt on and everything?
No, I don't have my A24 shirt on today. It's in the wash. It's just a pure black shirt today. But I wanted to say, before you even get a chance to say anything, I was very much looking forward to Talk to Me. I avoided all of the marketing material as I usually do. I went in completely blind, other than knowing that there was something up with some sort of freaky hand and that horror audiences were eating it up. So, yeah, I was very much looking forward to this one. What about you, Rowan? Were you looking forward to Talk to Me?
Yeah, so I saw kind of the trailer when they released it. Like you, I'm always interested in new A24 stuff. I knew it was kind of like first-time directors. And I guess the real hype up for me came, when was it? Like, I went and saw this Saturday. So Friday, another film reviewer I follow, Sean Fennessy from The Ringer, tweeted about it, which, I mean, he's big enough that you usually got to pay him to tweet about your stuff. And just saying that he thought it was the best debut since Barbarian for horror. And so I was just like, pumped. I was like, all right, let's go. So I was really looking forward to it.
Yeah, so we're not going to waste any more time. Is this another A24 horror hit in the making? Well, before we get into that, I think we should throw it on over to the trailer.
Hands up.
Cannot go for more than 90 seconds.
What happens after 90 seconds?
Don't want to stay. Now say, talk to me.
Talk to me.
83 seconds, get it off him!
What if we opened the door but we didn't shut it?
Don't want to stay.
What you just heard is from Talk to Me, directed by Danny and Michael Philippou, also known as Raka Raka, and written by Danny Philippou and Bill Hinsman. And the story is as follows. When a group of friends discover how to conjure spirits using an embalmed hand, they become hooked on the new thrill, until one of them unleashes terrifying supernatural forces. Now, here on Now Slaying, we like to keep things relatively spoiler-free up front before getting into the more in-depth, spoiler-filled discussion. So, Rowan, what are your spoiler-free thoughts on Talk to Me?
So yeah, I thought this was a pretty slick debut from these folks. It looked really good. Of course, when I went in, like the first thing I do when I'm buying my tickets nowadays is I'm checking to see how long am I sitting in this theater. Am I there for 2 hours? Am I there for 5 hours? Like, what's the deal?
Yeah. Is this an Oppenheimer situation where you're going to be stuck for 3 hours?
I feel like it's just an automatic thing now. Like, I already assume I'm going to be in the theater for at least 2.5 hours for any movie now. It's like, I don't even think they make movies 2.5 hours now, really, any less. So very surprised when I saw this was like a cool hour and a half.
94 minutes, apparently.
Yeah, so I a little, almost like, which I shouldn't be, but almost a little worried, because I'm like, oh no, why is this movie so short? What's going on
Did
here?
they have enough, did they have enough to sustain a feature length, or did they just, spin their wheels, essentially?
But I thought this was kind of interesting, because this kind of was like towing the line to me for something a little different for A24, where you could almost, we got the common theme that we continue to talk about with A24 is our grief theme, but it's how to mix this A24 grief horror in with kind of to me, I was really trying to think about other ones, but to me, this is their first like real step into this kind of like horror for teenagers kind of thing where, and it's not just about it being about teenagers, but I just could really feel with the marketing and everything, like they were aiming this at a younger audience than they probably normally do.
Yeah, this one, especially where it's, it's made by Raka Raka, which have their own fan base, from YouTube and whatnot. It very much felt kind of like a mixture of, I don't know, something like a Ouija and then like a bodies. And then, you put a little bit of the A24 sheen on there, which obviously this wasn't produced by A24. This was just acquired and distributed by them. But it very much had like that higher, I don't necessarily want to say higher caliber filmmaking, even though I personally believe that, but it had like this kind of sheen, this competency to it that I was like, oh, this is very impressive, especially as a directorial debut. That, yeah, I'd kind of agree with you. It feels more commercial than a lot of A24 movies is probably what I'd say. Like it's not quite as of a slow burn as something like, a Hereditary or a The Witch or something, This feels like a very palatable horror movie. Like I'd be surprised if most audiences didn't get something out of this.
Yeah. Now I was curious, like, are you obviously, it seems like you're kind of familiar with like the YouTube, the Raka, like, I'm old man here. I have no idea. I was like, I don't know what this means. Everything I read about it, I was like, is this important to me? Like, are they big YouTubers? What did they do on YouTube? Who knows? I have no idea.
Yeah, I think they're known for kind of like comedy shorts and whatnot, and they are larger YouTubers for sure. Like, they have almost 7 million subscribers, I just checked. They are like a younger demographic, though. Like, some of the guys I work with at work who are like, in around 20, 21 years of age, like, he knows who Raka Raka is. Right, like who these, Australian twins, that, they specialize in. I'm pretty sure it's comedy shorts and also like vaguely horror shorts and, just kind of different genres of content, essentially, is kind of what you'd say. They're a little bit more variety. Like I've seen them kind of feature in some other more mainstream YouTubers' content as just, as personalities. Two guys that like to crush a couple of beers and have fun, essentially, is what they were playing in the other videos and collabs I've seen them in.
So this is just the new pathway if you want to become a horror director, I guess, is like you basically have to be in some sort of comedy realm and then you have to just come over to horror.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be a trend the last couple of years, and then even with YouTubers and having like a pre-established fan base, like I think Markiplier, who's also huge, right? He's like 25 million subscribers or some shit. Like he's producing and possibly even starring in another indie horror movie, like based off of a video game here that I think is going to be out within the next year.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe this is a new line for, these YouTubers. They get a fan base, they kind of bring that fan base to studios and they get, something funded that hopefully winds up into more interesting and, newer directorial debuts and some more good horror movies.
Yeah, hopefully. But yeah, generally, like I said, like I thought this looked really good. It was kind of interesting because I think you would almost complain that, I would tend to complain with most movies where I'm like, I kind of, checked my watch, but not for a bad thing. It was just for, like, I felt the pacing was really good of it. And I was really worried because I came in, I knew it was only an hour and a half. And I'm like, oh my God, how are they going to, like, pull off this story in an hour and a half? Mm-hmm. And it was one of the only times I felt good that, like, I kept thinking, I'm like, man, I got to be at almost an hour and a half time just because I'm so used to long movies.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was like, oh, is this just gonna end or something? And then I'm gonna be disappointed. But yeah, like I felt like I was getting my time's worth. Everything was packed. I thought, even though I didn't really recognize any of it, probably one of the few movies of the last couple years I can remember where, even though I can't say any of the music's like on a playlist I listen to or anything, one of the few times that music that they're like, all right, there was like some UK grime rap, a lot of that actually, and it sounded like some just kind of mumblecore trap rap stuff, but music that I was like, yeah, I could imagine teenagers listening to this.
A newer generation, essentially, is what it felt like to me, like coming in and heralding, like, this is a new voice, this is new music, this is like what we listen to. Like, I kind of got that vibe as well, and even like the way that social media and the reliance on cell phones and whatnot was portrayed in the movie, it didn't feel like somebody, like even like myself, trying to figure out like, oh, how would, the teens, how would the Zoomers actually be using their cell phones at a party? It just very much felt like this is the way it is, like the way the videos were going viral, the sorts of content creators they were watching on their phones, just how anything happening at a party, half the room was filled with cell phone screens and lights of people recording what was going on. Like it's kind of scary in a way, like kind of like this distance where we feel like we need to record absolutely everything, but it feels very authentic to me. And judging by the directors and their age, it probably is like a very much a lived experience that they're very familiar with, is what it felt like.
Yeah, because like I said, I mean, I just feel like the last couple years we've kind of had the attempts at this, and to me, obviously to me it was really about the music, where I'm just like, usually it's music that kind of sounds like it's trying to mimic something that like a younger audience would listen to, and then I'm always kind of left like, what the fuck is this? Especially to me, it's really hard when you're trying to use not just like mumble rap, but like any sort of rap in horror. It's just like a really hard thing to approach, where this, I was just like, this might be the best example of it just naturally fitting in to the world.
Yeah, I think it completely fit the vibe, and I think the reason why is because the music was so like audacious and in your face, but also like the camera work and the style of the movie was very front forward as well. Like you kind of mentioned, like right from the beginning, you kind of knew like, oh, this was kind of impressive. And that's pretty much the opening shot of this movie, is like a very lengthy tracking shot that goes into a party, probably has somewhere between 50 and 100 extras, like all these kids partying and dancing and, different levels of like complexity of what they're actually doing in the background. You have all this dialogue, you have a stunt, and it's very impressive. It's very much like it just felt competent right from the beginning. And I've used that word, quite a lot on a lot of the movies we review here within the last year on this show. And it was just like, when I was watching it, I just felt like I was in good hands right off the bat. Now, is that saying that it's, without fault? Like, no, there's some parts where it stumbles a little bit, and, we'll probably get more into that in the spoiler discussion. But I just thought right from the bat, I was like, this is very impressive. Like, I just was like, okay, I'm in, let's see where this goes. So you watched the trailers, I assume, before seeing this, right?
Yeah, I did see like whatever the main trailer was, I think, that they first released.
So I knew nothing about this other than a creepy hand. Everyone was talking about the A24 logo, like contorting, a hand contorting into the two in their logo. And I just like absolutely loved the conceit of this movie. The shaking hands with an embalmed hand, kind of having like this bridge to the undead, like this tactile thing that they'd have to interact with. They'd have to say certain words, saying "talk to me," where the title comes from, and basically having like a way to channel spirits for like 90 seconds is kind of like the rules of the world. I just was like, this is such a simple horror concept that we've seen done numerous times through seances or Ouija boards or cursed artifacts, and obviously the hand can be one of those as well. But it just felt, I don't know why it felt different, or it felt more exciting to me when I was watching it. Maybe it's just the hand itself is a little bit creepy with all the different, what's scrawled and written all over it. Or maybe it's just literally the way the music and the camera work and stuff would kind of really punch you in the gut every single time that they started, communing with the dead. Like the way that camera would zoom back and like kind of crane backwards, like with their neck snapping backwards and stuff. It was just, I don't know, there was something with it that it just really worked for me. Right away when you saw the first scene, I was like, oh yeah, I can understand how if this was happening, this would be like really messed up and a viral sensation that people would be kind of talking about, like, oh, this is obviously a hoax. But it was also just really effective as like a horror concept, I thought.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting with that, just because, I generally find, I mean, just from even, horror movies of the last, like, 40 years, some of the hardest horror movies to make are like ones that involve like Ouija boards or some sort of like a cursed object, because it's usually just comes off corny, and like those movies are usually never any good, a la like any of the early 90s, late 80s, like direct to TV Amityville movies they tried to make, whether it's about a cursed lamp or whatever. Yeah, like you said, this, like the hand was just like looked odd enough, but it was just like, to me, it was like a really well thought out, like how people were going to interact with it, how it was going to like interact with them and with the world, like you said, with the camera angles and just kind of the immediate like snapback motions, things like that. And to me, like when I saw the trailer, I really like, I think, and we'll get into it in the spoiler section, but what's kind of interesting is like, the hand isn't even really be like that big of an issue in the film. Like, there's so much other stuff going on that they were smart to not let kind of leak with the trailer. So there was a lot of things, and like I said, there's some stuff I won't say in this, but a couple things that I'm kind of curious if maybe there's like a couple key films that I was like, I wonder if like they were influenced by these or had watched them, because it was like some films that like recently have gotten like some shine being a little bit older movies. But yeah, like it was just the hand was overall impressive. I'm kind of waiting. I'm like, are we gonna sell this hand? There's no way A24 doesn't cash in on this.
No way. This thing's gonna be pricey. You're gonna get like a life-size replica of this hand for like $200 and then an extra $50 shipping on the A24 shop. Give it 6 months, because they're pretty slow with the production pipeline. They probably never knew what they had with this 100%. But yeah, I could definitely see replica hands being officially licensed from A24. If not, just Etsy shops flooded with them. There's gonna be some of these hands going around for sure.
I'm just waiting for our friends to anyone that gets the Wish version.
Yeah, it comes in, it's just a very, very small hand, tiny hand. What do you think about the practical effects in this? This movie had far more like visceral gore or visceral violence in it than I was expecting going into this, because once again, I had absolutely no idea what it was going to be, and then it was like, oh, this is just a possession movie. This is just seances, essentially, But there is kind of like a visceral nature to a lot of the violence in this movie, and I think a lot of it is kind of bolstered by the practical effects, the gore, and, the makeup, and, just a lot of it really worked for me. I liked how they portrayed the undead, like with their kind of swollen, body parts, their waxy flesh, the milky eyes, stuff like that. I thought was really effective. And then how horrific a certain character looks after having an incident, I will keep it vague, I thought was always unsettling. And there was even a couple of moments throughout that genuinely got me, not necessarily in a jump scare way, but kind of like I had a feeling of, I guess, horror. I guess I had a feeling of like I was unsettled a little bit by what I was watching. Like there were moments in this that I was like, this is really effective. And I can't wait to talk about those in the spoiler section. But how did you feel about the effects overall?
Yeah, well, just like you, I mean, and I did see, the trailers and everything, like far more kind of visceral gore than I was expecting. I think it was kind of interesting to me, because I don't know if this has ever been done so quickly, but I think it, and it is A24, so it kind of has that ha-ha to it, in the fact that, like, it's just really interesting as new filmmakers to see how quickly, and this isn't the only film that's come out in the last couple years, but, like, how quickly of an influence, not just Ari Aster, but like A24's brand of horror has like seeped into younger directors and writers. Because obviously a lot of the gore in this, like I kept thinking about like Hereditary and Midsommar, and it, like not even like necessarily how it looked, but like how it's presented to the audience, and like and kind of the beats they use to present it, and like musical cues, and just like anything like that. And I was just like, I was like very impressed by it. But like I said, I was also just like, it's very interesting how quickly he just had kind of like rewritten like how you do horror and like effects and everything.
Yeah, there were moments in this that reminded me of Hereditary as well, specifically with some of the gore, like what you were saying, kind of like the beats of what was happening, where it's just very sudden and very unflinching, and it's very like matter of fact, this is happening, and they don't even really give you like a moment to catch your breath. You're just kind of watching it like, oh my god, what am I seeing? Which, once again, it's very impressive stuff. Sophie Wilde as Mia, this is the first thing she's ever acted in, and I thought she was great. I thought it was a great performance by her in basically the lead role as Mia, and I also thought Joe Bird as Riley was really effective as well, kind of like the younger brother character in the movie. I really enjoyed him as well. Did any of the performances stand out for you?
I was pretty impressed with most of the cast. Like you said, Sophie Wilde and Joe Bird, I thought were really good. I did really like Alexandra Jensen in it. I thought they were fantastic. I liked, I think it's Chris Alosio, who played like kind of the jock guy that has possession of the hand most of the movie.
Oh yeah, he was good. Like there's a little duo, him and I forget the other character, maybe Hannah might have been the character's name, not 100% sure. But they kind of had this energy between them that really helped elevate whenever the ceremony or the communing with the dead was happening. Like they were just so excited and like lively about like, oh yeah, shit, it's about to go down, you know, just hyping it up. That was very fun. Like I guess that's what it is. All of the moments where they're communing with the dead, there is a level of almost like fun to this as well, and like teetering on the edge of disaster, which, you know, is why some people have probably compared it to, you know, a metaphor for doing drugs at parties or whatnot, right? You know, but when I was watching the movie, a lot of time these sort of seance or communing scenes in most horror movies, they're very minimal, they're very slow. You know, it's pitch black, it's flickering candles, it's, you know, you're waiting for, you know, the planchette to move on the board. Where in this, it was just so excited, so energetic. It was almost like nervous laughter a lot of the scenes. You know, it was just it was something different.
The only thing that really threw me off was Miranda Otto played Jade's mom. So that really threw me off because she was one of the main stars of Sabrina for Netflix.
Yeah, I recognized her from, I think it was Lord
of the Rings. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's a pretty like large actor. So I was like, it kept throwing me off because I kept being like, man, you know, this woman really looks like one of the aunts from Sabrina the Teenage Witch. And then I was like, no, that can't be her. And then when I looked it up, I was like, oh yeah, no, that was definitely her.
Yeah, knowing Lord of the Rings, I mean, she's probably an Aussie or a New Zealander herself, so that's probably how she got in there. She has a really good scene as well where essentially she's trying to figure out if they're going to be throwing a party. And I just thought it was like a really cool way. Like it felt like how a modern mom in a horror movie should be, where she's interrogating everything, kind of playing them against each other. And it's you know, it's quick, it's only a minute or two and it's still fun.
Yeah.
But I was just like, this is a smarter parent than we typically see in horror movies.
Yeah, I thought she's fantastic.
The only kind of detractors I will say for this movie is I will say that the third act got a little bit bumpy for me at times. There were some aspects where I was like, okay, this kind of seems like we're forcing things to happen. And there was one scene in particular where I felt like the rules that you've mentioned that are so well established by the hand and kind of like the ceremony and what they're doing, there was a moment where I felt like it kind of betrayed the rules a bit, where we'll definitely discuss in the spoiler discussion. But ultimately, I still found that it stuck the landing. It's not without its blemishes, but it's pretty damn impressive for a directorial debut, I would say. Did you have any issues with it, really, that we can speak vaguely about?
I think no more vague than you did, because I basically also had all my issues kind of came in, like, the third act and some of the rules and that kind of thing. But like you said, like, I mean, just overall impressive.
Yeah, so I'm guessing, based off our discussion, we'd both recommend this, I would assume?
100%.
Yeah, it's a strong recommendation from me as well. That's a recommendation from both of us. I mean, if this is playing in a theater near you, I think you should probably go check it out. But now I think it's time to cut to the spoiler discussion for Talk to Me. We are now in our spoiler discussion for Talk to Me, so if you've not seen Talk to Me, it's time to tune out and come back once you've seen the movie, or keep listening if you simply don't care. Rowan, kind of where I'd like to start is just, you kind of hinted at in the spoiler-free discussion of some certain influences that you were kind of curious if the filmmakers saw, or maybe they were paying homage to. What influences did you mean by that? Was it just Hereditary, or was there something else?
So, no, I kept one of them out purposefully, because obviously I'm going to have to talk about it, but I was very curious if we had a duo of maybe Event Horizon stands going on here, because we do kind of get these one of the main kind of gore, which was like very interesting, because I don't even want to say gore, because you see it so briefly, is where, you know, we're trying to find out what's going on with Riley. Where's Riley? And basically, like, these demons are just kind of like orgy eating Riley, which was so reminiscent of Event Horizon, where, like, we're supposed to get these flashes. And obviously Event Horizon has, you know, its whole lore of, like, we're supposed to get way more, and they cut it, the studio, and let them do it. But it was this whole premise of these, like, flashes of, like, this demonic, just, like, flesh-eating, like, orgy going on. You know, I thought as a film that, like, the last 5 years has really been, like, propped up. There's been, like, 4 or 5 different, like, 4K and Blu-ray versions of this put out in this, like, real Event Horizon's renaissance. I was like, man, I'm very curious if they were fans of that film just because simply of that whole plot.
You know what's funny? You mentioned that there used to be a lot more footage for Event Horizon as well, and the directors have come out and said that initially that scene was about 2 minutes long, but it got truncated to like whatever it is in the movie, like 10 seconds or something, right? So it is interesting. There is a little bit of a parallel there, but that was also one of the most effective scenes for me. When I kind of mentioned that there was these scenes that kind of gave me this visceral feeling of like terror, I guess. When the little girl says, "I let you in," and since we so strongly understand the rules of this, it was like such an inversion on my expectations. Like, oh, the demon can let you inhabit their body and see what they're living through. It was just like absolutely terror for me. And then the way the music kind of ratcheted up, you know, the fleshy orgy as you're talking about, like this hellish vision. I was just like, damn, this is really effective. Like, I felt like I didn't want to see it, but I also couldn't look away. It was just so effective for horror.
Yeah, it was just such a great use. Like you said, like, just the music ramp up, everything. And, like, so smart, because I feel like if you're a first-time director, there's probably, you know, you're really fighting the urge if you're, like, trying to go there to be like, let me just give you, like, everything. Let me just, like, put this full screen and make you, like, see all this, you know, gore. And it was so smart for them to have the restraint to really just kind of like have that peak and that's it. And I was like, just how smart of them.
Yeah, similarly, another moment in the movie that it really kind of made me like sit up straight, you know, kind of be like, oh geez, was when they actually show Riley, you know, it going past, you know, the 50 seconds or whatever he was supposed to have, and he starts smashing his head off the table, which is super reminiscent of Peter in Hereditary, you know, in the classroom, smashing his head, like the way like all the veins are bulging in his neck and his face is getting all contorted, and he starts smashing his face off the table. And it was kind of like, I think the room was kind of like thought he was like a joke or something at first, like they kind of laughed nervously at it, and then he just kept doing it, and then he tries to gouge out his eye and all this shit. I was like, bro, this is a lot. And then finally he flies across the room in the chair still tied to it and starts smashing his head off like the banister and stuff. Is just like, bro, it was so much that I was just like, most movies probably would have stopped after him smashing his head once or twice, but this movie goes like, they don't leave anything on the table. They go completely balls to the wall with this scene, and it really worked. Yeah. What do you think of that scene? Because when I was watching, I was like, Rowan's gonna love this. Like, it's so messed up.
I thought it was great. So yeah, when I went and saw this, I went and saw it with Jill, and we were laughing just because, like, yeah, it was a pretty, like, there was quite a few people there, and it was a lot of teenagers. And like when that happened, yeah, like it just like was quiet, and you could just kind of hear people like, oh shit. And then it just like went on, and kudos to them for, they must have known I was going to watch this. They were like, we got to take it as far as we can.
It's funny because it's almost like a vibe killer for the movie too. Because the movie, like, obviously it has some, you know, there's like the grief angle, as we mentioned, of course, with A24. There's always the grief, you know, Mia's mother passed away a couple years ago, and, you know, it's believed to be a suicide, but Mia doesn't want to believe that part. And, you know, she winds up communing through Riley, and it seems really mean-spirited, and it's really like, it's, you know, it's ruining the vibe of the party. All these people are having fun communing with spirits, and now, you know, it's a vibe killer. But even that scene itself is such like a vibe killer for the movie, where, like I said, the way it portrays like this act, it's so fun, and, you know, they're enjoying it, and it's very energetic. But then when this happens, it's like so horrific that it's like, oh my god, like it completely grinds everything to a halt. That I just thought it was so effective.
And I thought, like, throughout the film, you know, and we already said it, but like, kudos Sophie Wilde, because Mia was a very interesting character to me the whole time, because realistically, like, most of this movie, like, Mia is a piece of shit. Like, she's not a likable protagonist, and pretty much brings like everything on to this family that's, you know, kind of like taking her in emotionally as their own, but like at the end is just basically terrorizing this family for her own gain. And this is like the other part where I thought they were really smart throughout the film, and which is why I think, like we said, where the third half might have got a little shaky, but I also, kind of gave it the slight pass was that I thought they did a good job of not just Mia, but kind of these demons or spirits that have kind of inhibited Mia, which, I think by the end of it, we realize probably isn't her mother. It's probably actually just like, some other demon
manipulating her or something. Yeah. It's possible for sure.
But I like that, it definitely made me go, especially when the movie was done, where I'm like, all right, I'm very curious to watch it again and see, like, can I point everything out that could have been false, where even though we're looking at it that like, oh, you know what, like, even though we don't say whether this is true or not, like maybe these rules that we broke are just Mia seeing it, and it's like the demons projecting things, or also I do like the thought of like, or is it just like chaos? It's chaos. It's demons running this movie. Like, so we don't really care about the rules because we'll do whatever the hell we want.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there is that argument for it as well. I can't wait to watch it again and see if there's any tells about which way that actually goes. You mentioned Mia as a shitty character, and I really liked the character because I thought she felt like an accurate teenager.
Yeah,
where you're a narcissist, everything's all about you. You're the main character and everything. You don't care about other people, and that's essentially what the character was. And I very much enjoyed her, like how much she was like going after her best friend's boyfriend, and just basically, like you said, like ruining this family's life essentially, right? Like the whole part of her letting Riley do it, despite his sister not wanting him to do it, and kind of other people at the party kind of pushing back a little bit, but she kind of says, let's do it anyways. It's so destructive. And I love that choice was hers, and she's such a big fuck up essentially because of it. But you also mentioned the rules. So let's get into the one part of the movie that I didn't really like, the moment in the movie where the mom is telling her that her father is actually, a demon, like masquerading as her father. And then when the demon comes into the room, it's a dead version of her father kind of climbing across her. And the movie does the really cheap thing of her real father breaking into the room, but then her stabbing her real father. It was just a really messy way to accomplish all of this. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, and once again, maybe on a rewatch, maybe there were other times when this happened, but it just kind of felt like this was the only time in the movie to me where the demons were masquerading as someone who was actually still alive, but then also showing a dead version of that person eventually as well. Like it just felt like it was kind of, I don't know, kind of like eating its own tail. It was breaking everything that it kind of worked so hard to set up to me. So I was like, that was the one scene I was like, I kind of pushed back a bit. I was like, I don't know if this works 100%. And also, I don't know if I really needed it, because the father is kind of such a, he's not really part of the equation for most of this movie, where it's almost like you kind of almost just could have cut him out. But that didn't really work for me 100%. Was that one of the rule breaking moments for you as well, or did you like that a little bit more? Or
I thought the guy that played the father, Marcus Johnson, like I actually thought he did a pretty good job. I mean, like you, it's one of those storylines I wish maybe had been a little more developed, because I do think it would have been interesting. Obviously, we have like this, this, whether it was intentional or not, like suicide kind of in, causing all this grief to, this other family in the film, Mia's real family. And I'm trying to think, like, I think you kind of worded it the best, is I just felt it was a real cheap way to create, like, just kind of like another death for the film, where, when we started to get the father and her talking, I just felt like maybe we needed like another 5 minutes or another scene with them to build up more of a relationship, or even a contentious relationship, so that death actually meant a little bit more. What I thought, I guess it's just me kind of thinking, I thought what would have almost worked better was, pretty much the first half of this movie, the dad is essentially just like a shadow. Like, we never see his face. It's always just kind of like he's talking in the background. She's barely listening to what he's saying. And so to me, I was like, I wonder if I almost would have played the entire film him like that, where like she's a teenager. She's so self-absorbed and stuff, where, he's basically just, no different than, one of these demons. Like, he's just in the background as a shadow, as almost like this mysterious character.
I think I would have preferred something like that. I either needed it cut out basically entirely, some rationale for why he's barely in the movie, which is kind of what you just explained, or I needed it to be played up a little bit more, which I think you could have done, like you said, with an extra maybe even 5 minutes. You needed another scene or two to kind of see how despondent this father was, or how guilt-ridden he was, or how he, you know, pushed her away or something. That's why she was like such a burden to the other family. Like, you needed a little bit more there, because the movie almost treads at a certain point of like setting him up as like he killed the mother or something.
Yeah.
That, like, this was the big twist. And I was just like, okay, if this goes in this direction, it's going to get too stupid. And it didn't go in that direction, but it was just, you know, like I said, there wasn't enough there that the movie didn't really seem like what it wanted to do with him. And then it was kind of trying to force the father into a bunch of different narratives of hinting at different things that didn't really work, I didn't think. Similarly, the one other thing that didn't really work for me was the wheelchair push scene right at the very end of the movie. I really like this idea that it's kind of set up in early on in the movie that Mia can't put someone out of their misery. I really like that idea. It's set up with the kangaroo when they hit it with the car, which obviously it's like we've seen so many movies where people hit deer with car.
Yeah.
With cars, plural, not just car. But in this one, it's a kangaroo, and I was like, all right, it's an Aussie horror movie through and through, 100%. And I like this recurring idea of the kangaroo, you know, wounded and her not being able to put it out of its misery. But then at the end, I honestly don't know if she was actually trying to kill Riley and push him out, and like maybe his sister got there in time to save him, or if she fought back against the demons and chose to throw herself out into traffic to put herself out of her misery. I don't know ultimately what the movie was trying to say there in the final couple of seconds there before they got thrown out into traffic, just because it was so poorly edited and kind of poorly framed, which was just, it was so much different than the rest of the movie. And just maybe because it happened because of like a traffic collision and pile up is a lot for a movie of this budget to handle. But it was just like, it was something where I was confused 100% of the motivations or how this happened or what it was kind of trying to say ultimately with that moment.
I was pretty much the same. To me, I don't think it was necessarily that I hated that it happened, but it was more so just the editing and everything like that. I just think it was kind of confusing, and you could tell in my audience that people were kind of like, what what happened? And especially because the twist that we're kind of getting for like the finale of it, which I thought was done like a great twist, like
loved it,
fantastic. It was just like a shame that it fumbled a little bit there, and then it's like, oh, but here's that great twist. Because it was just, like I said, I understood it, that I was like, okay, like, you know, the demons have kind of fully consumed her now, or like fully trekking her. So I was fine. Like, you know, she was convinced, because to me, I was like, all right, you know, she couldn't kill the kangaroo, but she's like getting the courage because she thinks this is what I need to do, and I owe it to this family to like fix things. But like you said, just then when we see her in the road, and then we see like Jade holding her brother, I guess just because of the editing not being there, the physics of it were like confusing.
It was all slightly confusing. That is just like, I would have liked a little bit concrete if I knew 100% what happened there, I guess. And it's frustrating because it's confusing based on the filmmaking choices when the rest of the movie is so competent in its filmmaking. And it's not like, I don't think it's meant to be intentionally confusing, but it was confusing for me. One of the last things we'll speak about before we, you know, review this thing is toe sucking. I want to bring this up because I thought
deep throat.
I thought this was a really effective sequence because, you know, someone who has had kind of like sleep paralysis in the past.
I thought you were going to say someone who regularly gets their toe sucked.
I can't divulge that sort of information here on the podcast, but someone who has had like sleep paralysis in the past, and, you know, obviously Newfoundland has this fascination with the old hag, and has someone who has written old hag things. I thought this old woman, gross woman in the corner of the room, just as she's drifting off to sleep, kind of coming towards her and crawling on the bed and all that, I thought it was super effective. And then I just thought it was a really weird choice for the movie to have like the toe sucking actually happen on camera as like a horrific act that then literally the lead character has to do as well as suck on the other actor's toes. It was something that was so off-putting, but it was right on the verge of just being like the silliest shit I've ever seen. It was effective horror that also really silly.
Yeah, I thought that scene was great. What was really funny about that scene is I guess I'm just getting trained from like every movie that's come out or before it came out. So you could see the light reflection on the closet door handles. And I was so mad. I was like, what the fuck? I was like, are they just ripping off like the boogeyman going on here?
Yeah.
And especially because, one of these new horror films that's coming out in the trailer does use the boogeyman eyes in the closet also.
Of
and
course.
So I'm like, did I see a trailer for a movie doing this before this movie? I already saw a movie a couple weeks ago. And then I was like, are they just showing me eyes in a closet? Like, is this the new thing, the new hip thing? But then, yeah, like I thought that whole scene was just old, like naked women are creepy, man. Like it always works. Just give me a creepy, like, horrific old woman. And especially when she's just, just groaning, just deep throating them toes.
Yeah, that was something special. I haven't seen that in another horror movie yet. And, I'd probably hasten to guess, say we're probably not going to see it too often.
And I thought the other great thing about it, because you could hear a lot of the teenagers in the audience, is everyone was assuming she was going to bite the toes off.
Oh, yeah.
Like 100%. So I thought, like, awesome that, like, they didn't just go for, like, this is going to be the easiest, like, thing to think of. Like, she just bite the toes off.
Mm-hmm.
Just, yeah, fantastic.
And all right. Before we go, we have to talk about the actual ending of the movie, where is basically it follows the wheelchair scene, like we said. Mia's in the road, she's all messed up. I was like, oh, okay, she's dead for sure. I was like, this is such a bleak ending, she's actually dead. But then she gets up and she starts walking around and goes into the hospital. And it's very much this weird scene where it's like, everything is okay, and she's just kind of passing through. And then it's revealed that it's like, oh no, she's actually dead. She's kind of passing through, like, literally, as a spirit, like watching, kind of what happened, Riley recovering and, her father walking away and all that stuff. And then she's just in pitch black. All the lights in the hospital turn out and she's just in this darkness, like this void of nothingness. And there's like a single light that kind of draws her like a moth to the flame. And she goes there and you get the payoff of the hand where it's literally like she goes there, she sits down and she grabs the hand. And when she grabs the hand, she's talking to someone that I think it's like Spanish. Like they're completely, elsewhere. They're not in Australia. They're in some other place in the world. And, they invite her in and, that's where the movie ends, like where she is actually the spirit on the other side. And it was so badass. I loved it. I was like, this is such a strong ending. Like, the ultimate, the last 1 minute of the movie is so strong. I loved it. Like, it sent me out of the theater on a high. What do you think of the ending?
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I'm really looking forward to Talk to Me, but the 2 is like a 2.
Yeah,
and like we need it. Maybe you can have the hand making like a 2 symbol.
A peace sign. There you go.
So many great marketing. It needs to be direct to Tubi. I'm sure that's where that'll go. But yeah, the ending was fantastic. I definitely it wasn't something I saw coming, which
no,
after
me neither.
After I saw it, I was like, man, I should have guessed that. Like I should have guessed.
It's so stupid. Like that's how effective this movie is. It lays out the rules so effectively, but for whatever reason, we're stunned. And even though we've seen, hundreds of horror movies probably at this point, we don't think about obviously the obvious thing to do is invert the rules, to change it, basically, it's not the demon that comes into you, but you go into the demon. Or it's, when the main character dies, obviously you're going to see, them on the other side. It's so obvious, but I never predicted it. And then I was just constantly like, man, this was genius. This is like the perfect ending. I absolutely loved it. So yeah, I don't know. I felt like an idiot, but I absolutely loved it as well. And with that, is there anything you want to, say before we get into reviewing this or rating it?
No, I think I'm good to rate it.
So if you're new to the podcast, our review rubric is nay, okay, yay, or slay. So Rowan, what would you give Talk to Me?
This was a hard one for me to think about because, I can't really think. It's been a while since I've seen something this strong from like a debut director, but not just strong, but like something like I had fun with. Like I just thought that it was there wasn't a lot of faults in it. Even the faults I could kind of find like, oh, okay, like maybe this is just something that I don't like, or like it's just so minor that it didn't really matter at the end of the day for my enjoyment. So yeah, I think I'm gonna give it a slay. Like I
oh shit! All right,
I think I'm gonna give it a slay. I thought, I don't know how much stronger you could get for like a debut. I mean, like, you know, I'm thinking like I think I slayed Hereditary, and like Hereditary to me was awesome when I saw it, and Get Out and things like that. And I guess what I reflected on most was Barbarian just kind of being the horror movie most recent that like I really enjoyed from a debut, and I think I liked this better than I liked Barbarian coming out of the theater. So yeah, I think I'm gonna give this one a slay. What about you, Colton?
Yeah, I think this is a hugely successful directorial debut. I don't think it's like as groundbreaking or like establishes like quite as strong of a directorial voice as like something like Hereditary or The Witch, which are the obvious A24 horror breakouts. But it's hugely entertaining. It's super effective as a horror. Like I said, you know, it unsettled me at times. I think it's a great concept, and strangely enough, this might be sacrilegious to say, I think I may have enjoyed it more than either of those movies that I just mentioned, because obviously Hereditary beats you down so bad, and The Witch has a couple of barriers up where, you know, it's that old English dialogue, it's much more of a slow burn. Now, is it objectively a better film than Hereditary and The Witch? You know, probably likely not. Obviously, film criticism is subjective, but you know, on a first watch, I have to say that I think I enjoyed Talk to Me more than those movies, which is crazy.
I like
it. Just enjoyment. So, you know, I struggle to think of a horror release that I've enjoyed as much as this one. I enjoy this more than Barbarian. The one that kind of raises a red flag is probably Nope. I remember when I left the theater with Nope, I felt like euphoric as well, and I was like, man, this is such a badass movie. So yeah, maybe Nope. But it's easily the best, you know, horror debut I've seen in a long time. And yeah, I'm gonna give Talk to Me a slay all day.
Nice.
I can't wait to see what Raka Raka does next. I absolutely adored this. I thought it was awesome.
I just can't wait to get a hold of A24 so we can make sure on the Blu-ray, the 4K, the slip covers, they got the quote from Colton, better than Hereditary or The Witch, ...
Yeah, just send all of the death threats my way, 100%. Yeah, and if you made it this far and you're not following us yet on our socials, you can do so at It Slays Podcast. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Slasher, Letterboxd, Threads.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't been on there yet, but we're on there apparently.
We are.
So, you know, we'd really appreciate it if you'd follow us or whatever you do on all those social media platforms. And if you want to help support the show financially, like our horror hounds Holly, Nicholas, Patrick, Mark, Stephen, Joy, and Carvey, gain access to the Patreon exclusive show Stream Screams and get episodes of the main show 48 hours early, be sure to head on over to patreon.com/itslayspodcast and choose whatever tier works best for you. Now, Rowan, go ahead and plug the playlist.
Yeah, so if you're in the spooky music, go to Spotify and look up the It Slays Podcast Horrific playlist. If you have any problems finding it, you can go to any of the social media Colton just mentioned, go to the Linktree link in the bio, and there is a button right there. Click it. It will open up the playlist, and we put scores or licensed music from horror movies we review, or iconic horror movies, or horror movies we love, and it's all there. We update it pretty regularly, so go on there, take a listen, get your spooky music on, because guess what? This heat's going to go away soon, and we're going to be getting in the spooky season before you know it, so just start early.
And yeah, with that said, next time on the show, we'll be reviewing The Last Voyage of the Demeter, probably. Oh, wait, never mind, you and Jill got something special coming up, right?
We have something special coming up.
Okay, well, the next major review will be The Last Voyage of the Demeter, which I think is another Dracula movie, but this time you don't have Nick Cage in the starring role, so it's probably going to be something a little bit different. I'd be shocked if it's another Now Slaying with a double slay, but you know, who knows, maybe it'll surprise us. And with that, I think that about wraps things up for this episode, so until next time, I'm Colton.
I'm Rowan.
And as long as you keep listening, we'll keep slaying.